The microphone was deciding that it didn't want to recognize. So let's get underway with this review. In case you're new here, and I've actually seen you stove type, so you're not new to me. But anyways, in case you're new here, my name is Mike. Welcome to the Pacific414 YouTube channel. Tonight, I'm going to be giving you my reaction and review to Spider-Man No Way Home. And Alana Vostek, yeah, that's spam. I am going to report it and get rid of it. I've been noticing it too much lately where during a live stream, whether it's my own or someone else's, you see Vostek. So just a word to the wise to anyone who sees it. If you see it on your own stream or someone else's stream, kindly remove it for them. But anyways, tonight, I'm going to be giving you my reaction and somewhat review to Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, to give you a little bit of a backstory, when I first heard about Spider-Man No Way Home, I really had zero interest in seeing the movie. I pretty much consider myself burned out on the MCU and burned out in comic book movies, although I, have given the Suicide Squad a chance, actually enjoyed it, thought it was better than it should have been. And I've also watched Hawkeye. Now, Hawkeye, I do have my gripes with Hawkeye. I will admit that. And I will have my review of the season finale out soon. But when it came to the MCU, especially when I was watching WandaVision and then Falcon and Winter Soldier, I felt I was burned out. I felt that, Endgame truly was the end for me, and I know it's been the end for a lot of fans out there, where once Endgame came and went, a lot of people really had no further interest in the MCU because there wasn't a reason. There really wasn't a reason. So, give it time. Again, you hear about Spider-Man No Way Home, and you hear that it's going to be the third Spider-Man film starring Tom Holland. And of course, you start hearing rumors that they're going to be bringing back Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. And of course, you get a little bit of, excited about it. But there's also a part of you, at least for me, that goes, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, folks, tonight I saw it. And I got to say, I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed it. And you could tell, and I know it's been said a lot by other people who have reviewed this movie, but I can also confirm it for myself. You can tell, excuse me, one moment. But you can tell where Kevin Feige and the MCU had control in the movie, and then you can tell where Amy Pascal and Sony had control of the movie. So what I mean by that is, in the beginning, with all the jokes and everything that's become the MCU of late, well, that's definitely in here. In the second act, it gets more serious. And then in the third act, oh gosh, this movie is worth that third act alone. This movie is a joy to watch from start to finish. Yes, there are some slow parts. I will admit, there are some slow parts in this movie. But it doesn't last too long. It doesn't take away your enjoyment of the movie. You go into this movie with low expectations like I did, then you'll be fine. And yes, it was very hard to try to avoid any spoilers from everyone who's seen it a week ago. And from my YouTube friends here, they were saying, Mike, you've got to go see it. You've got to go see it. I said, I will in time. I wanted to go see it on opening night. I just wasn't able to. But tonight presented an opportunity to go see it, so I went and saw it. I thought it was pretty neat how you had Peter protecting MJ as he's trying to escape all the media circus by Jonah Jameson. Of course, you know who he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be the MCU's and Sony's Alex Jones. I mean, you can tell that right off the bat. But how he's trying to protect her and trying to protect Aunt May and, Happy. Of course, all the news helicopters are surrounding his apartment once Peter and MJ get back to the apartment. They end up, going to Happy's condo and staying there. And, it was nice to see, MJ and Ned and Peter all getting excited about going to college, and they all wanted to go to MIT. And of course, you had Flash there, who's acting like he's been Peter's best friend, Spider-Man's best friend from the get-go, and we all know he hasn't. But with Ned, MJ, and Peter, they get all excited about wanting to go to MIT, wanting to be accepted to any college. Aunt May brings Peter a few college acceptance letters, and of course, unfortunately, he's rejected, and it's all because of everything that's being spread about Peter and his involvement with Mysterio's death. So, we have that going, and then, of course, as the story goes on, Peter, finds out that the MIT vice administrator is actually on her way to the airport. So he wants to go meet her at the airport. And of course, there's a traffic jam. And he's actually able to find her in the vehicle that's taking her to the airport. And he starts talking to her there. And the reason why I'm bringing up this particular scene is because this is where, you get that first yes moment. Is when you see Alfred Molina show up as Doc Ock, and it's the first time since Spider-Man 2. And of course, that was on this weekend on USA Network, so of course I watched it. But anyways, you see Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, and he and Peter fight. Peter's able to save a family. He's able to save that vice administrator. And, Doc Ock finds out that, well, Peter Parker isn't his Peter Parker. So, he gets trapped in that containment field. And, this all happens after Peter goes to Bleecker Streak and talks with Doctor Strange. And we find out that Juan is Sorcerer Supreme because Doctor Strange was away for 5 years because of the blip. And of course, we have the scene where Dr. Stephen Strange was casting the spell. And of course, because Peter keeps interrupting him because he doesn't want people to forget who he is, even though he's specifically come there to ask Doctor Strange to make everybody forget. He starts saying, no, I don't want MJ to forget me. I don't want Ned to forget me. I don't want Aunt May to forget me. So that's when the spell goes awry. And, it does lead up to, the fight on the freeway with Doc Ock. But the very cool part is William Dafoe returning as the Green Goblin. I swear, and this is something that I've heard other people say, but they're right. I can confirm this. They are right. That William Dafoe, returning as the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, he hasn't lost a step. It's like, putting on an old pair of shoes and just getting right back to character. He didn't miss a step. And that was awesome. Of course, then you had, the Lizard show up, and of course, Sandman shows up. Then Electro shows up, Jamie Foxx, and I liked, the explanation as to why he didn't really look the same. Excuse me again. Sorry about that. But I like the explanation as to why he doesn't look the same in No Way Home as he did in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with all of you who are watching this live or watching this on the replay. I had no interest in seeing The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I still have no interest in seeing it. But anyways, their explanation is the fact that the energy in the universe that Peter's in is just a little different. So it affects him just a little differently. So I thought that was a pretty clever explanation as to why he looks different than how he looked in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I had seen how he looked in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and trust me, hands down, he looks so much better. So much better. But anyways, Peter's able to capture Electro, Sandman, the Lizard is caught, and of course, Doc Ock is already there. And Stephen Strange comes in and starts talking about this box that will reset everything back to the way it was and send all our villains back to where they came from. But they're missing someone. They're missing Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. And there's a cool scene involving Norman Osborn as Green Goblin where he's taken off the mask and he's destroyed the mask. But, as it was in, the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, he has multiple personalities. So, you've got that. But guess where he ends up showing up at? Well, he ends up showing up at Aunt May's workplace. And Aunt May calls Peter and says, there's Norman Osborn here to see you. So Peter gets there. And of course, each and every one of these villains that have shown up are looking at Tom Holland's Peter Parker and going, you're not Peter. And, they come to realize they are in a different universe. So, Peter comes up with a way to try to send them all back to the universe as better people. And that involves him taking all these villains that have crossed over from the multiverse to Happy's condo. And the reason why is because there's a case and it's an arc reactor that can manufacture different items that Peter may need. So they get there to Happy's condo, and of course, Happy and Aunt May in this movie, they've broken up. They've called off their relationship. So they get there. Peter goes over the plan. Of course, Doc Ock is the first test subject. And the reason why he's the first test subject is because Peter makes a new chip to replace the chip that malfunctioned in his arms so that Doc Ock can have control of his arms. And, these arms, of course, after the fight on the freeway, have some of Peter's nanotech that's on his suit. So you see the red across the arms. And as Peter is able to successfully develop a new chip and Bluetooth connect to the arms, he's able to control Doc Ock's arms to have him lifted up to where he can place the chip in the back of his neck. Once he does that, Doc Ock regains his control. he takes his energy collector, puts it on Electro, and he also has a way to help the Sandman, but the Sandman wants something to do with it, and of course, that's when the Green Goblin side of Norman Osborn comes out and starts wreaking havoc, and this is all happening at one point when the Lizard is in the back of this truck. Well, the Lizard's able to get out of this truck. The Lizard does cause some damage, but it's mainly the Green Goblin and Electro who cause the most damage, with Norman causing the worst damage of all. And that's when he and Peter are in the middle of their fight at this condominium complex. And Aunt May's there, and he takes his glider and controls it to go after Peter. But Aunt May gets in the way, and Aunt May ends up getting injured. Well, that injury is a fatal injury. And that's where Aunt May, played by Marissa Tomei, ends up dying. So, Peter's depressed, as can be expected, because he's just lost Aunt May. And he wants to give it up. But he also wants revenge on Norman Osborn for what he's done. And of course, this leads into the third act where, we see Andrew Garfield return as his version of Peter Parker. And of course, we see Tobey Maguire return as his version of Peter Parker. And again, this has been said multiple times, but the fact that those two Spider-Men are the ones who tell Tom Holland Spider-Man that, he can't give up, that he needs to continue to fight on. And yes, with great power comes great responsibility. But seeing those three together, that was cool. That was really cool. And I'll admit, like I said in the beginning, I thought I was done with comic book movies after Endgame and after what I saw with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But that moment, that was very cool to see them all come together. Of course, the way they come together is pretty interesting, because at one point, while Doctor Strange is trying to get this box that will reset everything and send everybody back to their proper universes, Ned is able to get a hold of the magic ring that Doctor Strange wears, thanks to Peter, because Peter used geometry to trap Doctor Strange in this dimension. So Ned is harnessing the power thanks to the ring, and he's able to bring in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield at his apartment complex. And of course, Ned's mom says, well, at one point, could you please remove the cobweb that's up there to Andrew Garfield? And of course, as we all know, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man doesn't need to create his own webbing. It's just automatically created and shoots out of his wrist. And that comes into play because Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire actually have a web off, a brief one, but it's a web off. But Ned's mom asked Tobey Maguire, Peter Parker, to clean up his mess. So that was nice. And it was nice how they basically look at Tom Holland's Peter Parker, lift him up, and they develop a plan to capture all the villains. So, that leads to the battle at the Statue of Liberty. And of course, it's under reconstruction with Captain America's shield on it. And they're all going through their plan on what to do. Of course, the plan doesn't work immediately because, when one person says Peter, the other two respond. So they come up with a way to distinguish each other, Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 3. So by doing that, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is able to take the antidote and return the Sandman back to normal. We have a moment with Andrew Garfield and the Lizard, and he's able to turn Dr. Connors back to normal. And, of course, they get some help. They get some unexpected help, at least as far as Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man would be concerned. And that's from Doc Ock. He actually helps them in their fight against Norman Osborn on top of the Statue of Liberty. And of course, by doing that, they're able to capture Electro, and then it leads to the final battle between our Peter Parker of the MCU and Norman Osborn, William Dafoe, the Green Goblin. And, it was pretty intense and, went back and forth for a little bit, but, it didn't go over its a lot of time. And what I mean by a lot of time is it didn't overstay its welcome. And there's a point where our Peter Parker takes the glider and it's, damaged and it has sharp edges, and he's about to kill Norman Osborn. And Tobey Maguire steps in and stops him. And as Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is trying to stop Tom Holland, well, then that gives Norman Osborn the opportunity to take this knife and put it in Tobey Maguire's back. No, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker Spider-Man. So what ends up happening then is they are able to take the antidote and stick it into Norman Osborn, and he doesn't have the influence of the Green Goblin anymore. So then what ends up happening is Doctor Strange ends up casting a new spell after, he says that he can't control what's happening with the rift in the multiverse, and, there are multiple, iterations of different villains and heroes starting to step through. So Peter says, well, can you cast the same spell that we tried to cast before, except this time have it where nobody remembers me? And Peter says, actually, no, it wasn't Peter, it was Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange says, if I do this, I won't even remember you. Are you okay with that? And Tom Holland says, I'm okay with it, but I need to say goodbye to my friends. And Doctor Strange tells him, make it quick. So, Peter says his goodbye to Ned, says his goodbye to MJ. And, of course, Peter says to her at one point, don't worry, I'll find you, to let her know that he'll come looking for her, and, they'll get reacquainted, and he'll basically reacquaint himself with everybody that he's met before. So Doctor Strange casts a spell. The universe is set right. And what we see next is we see Peter walk into this coffee shop where MJ works. And this coffee shop, I know I didn't bring it up in the beginning, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up now. This coffee shop is where MJ works, and, they serve donuts and coffee, but it gave him his first inspiration to go visit Dr. Stephen Strange. And that's what led us to Doctor Strange casting the spell for the multiverse. And when Peter gets to this coffee shop, he sees Ned and MJ, and they're talking, and they've been accepted into MIT. So Peter asks MJ for coffee. Excuse me. Sorry about that. But Peter asks MJ for coffee, and she says, "What's the name?" And he says, "Peter Parker." But there's a catch. Now, maybe I thought I noticed something else on it, but someone can correct me in the comments. But we have, the cup of coffee. It says Peter Parker, but underneath it, it says Spider-Man. So obviously that spell doesn't work, and of course it's all going to lead to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And of course, there was a line in this movie that kind of gave you a hint of things to come if there is another Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. And it's the fact that Ned says to Peter that he'll never turn into a villain on him. So I do know that in the comics, Ned does turn on Peter. So we'll probably see that at some point, but I don't know when. But I have to be honest with you that if you have, sort of been on the fence about going to see this movie, go see this movie. It's worth going to see. It is definitely worth going to see. I would highly recommend that you go see it. And, don't just see it once, go see it multiple times because you'll really enjoy it. I have only gone to see 2 movies in the theaters this year. The first was Ghostbusters Afterlife, and tonight going to see Spider-Man No Way Home. I really enjoyed both movies. They're fun movies. Yes, some might say it's fan service, but that's what we want when we go to these movies. We want the fan service. We want to be entertained. We want to feel joy. We want to have fun at the movies. We want to have fun at these movies. That's what it's all about. It's all about having fun at the movies. Escaping for 2 hours and 30 minutes or however long the movie is. That's what it's about. And that's what this movie's about. It's just about sitting back in the movie theater, eating popcorn, drinking soda, drinking water, whatever your drink of choice is, whatever your snack of choice is, and having fun. I do highly recommend this movie. If I'm going to give it a rating, and for those of you who don't know, in my episode reviews, it's best out of 5 stars. So if I'm going to give this movie a rating, I'm going to give it 5 stars. It's that good. It's that fun. It's that enjoyable. And that's what we need right now. We need to be able to go to the movies, go out, have fun, enjoy ourselves, and, live life. That's what we need to do. And that's what you get to do with this movie. I mean, sitting there in the auditorium, people are laughing, people are cheering, people are clapping, people are having fun. And that's what we need to do. We just need to have fun. So my reaction to it is it's a great movie. My review to it, again, a great movie. And my final word on this movie, it's a great movie. Go see it. I highly recommend it. 5 stars. Go see it. And thank you for watching. Hope you all have a good rest of your evening or morning, depending on where you are. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. You don't like this video, give it a thumbs down. Leave a comment down in the comment section below. And if you want to talk more about Spider-Man No Way Home with me, you can find me on social media. And you can find me on Discord. The links are down in the description below. And until next time, this has been Mike for Pacific414 Movie Review. Thank you all very much. And I will see you all later.